What a week it has been so far, and it's not over yet. A lot going on around West Virginia sports, around WVU. I'm Mike Asti, joined alongside by Luke Blain. This is another episode of Mountaineer Report here via West Virginia Sports Now, available everywhere you get your podcasts, and that does include YouTube as well. And we are going to talk about the opening now of spring ball. Spring is not really in the air. The weather's not yet cooperating to spring. We were teased a little bit a week or so ago. But the football team is practicing in the spring period nonetheless. We will let you know when we can see them, if we can see them, how much we can see them, hopefully more than a year ago. That schedule now is matriculating out. And talked to Rich Rod yesterday now. So we'll give our thoughts on what he had to say and how important this spring is. Different than last year in many ways. And of course, also Luke's been covering the basketball program and Ross Hodge's team. And recently it's been rough, as it now appears they are off the bubble altogether. And it really does seem like that Kansas State loss on the road probably popped the bubble if it had any chance to soar them to the NCAA tournament. Probably not happening now. Again, Luke Blain, Mike Asti, your Mountaineer Report, West Virginia Sports Now. But before we get to basketball, and maybe we'll also touch on some baseball drama at the end of this show. But before we get to all of that, again, spring not in the air, but it's spring ball for Rich Rodriguez and the West Virginia Mountaineer. This is year 2 of Rod's return to Morgantown. And as we've said on many past shows, Luke, that you kind of can get a mulligan for year 1. You had all these injuries. The money wasn't really right. You're taking over a program. It's not new for him, but it really was. A whole new roster. Didn't get to recruit most of the offseason. They went 4-8, one of his worst years as a coach, one of the program's worst years in its history. But okay, but it puts pressure on year 2 to at minimum take a step forward, at minimum get postseason play in a bowl game. And he's still talking about trying to contend for the Big 12 title and do more than that. And we'll see what actually happens. So what do you want to get out of the spring period, Luke? What do you want to see happen in this spring period? What do you think would make this a success? Obviously, there's no games that'll be won or lost in the spring. This is not even as important as fall camp. You'll have months after this of an off season. But unlike last year, there's no more transfer portal window. And as Rich Rod even said at his spring kickoff press conference, unlike last year, this is most likely the roster. You can add a few players. He may do so. If things happen, you'll have to replace a guy. Who knows if someone will get kicked off this team. But for the most part, this is your group. We could not say that going into spring 1 year ago.
Yeah, well, I think you need to have some sort of cohesiveness. I think that is the main aspect that I think really needs to be emphasized going into this next season. Like you said, you've had a longer off season than you had the pleasure of having last year, considering that, he was he didn't start in December. So you absolutely have that. And then you don't have to worry about the spring portal. I think by next season there should be a much better idea of who your contributors are going to be and the players you're going to lean on across all positions. It shouldn't take half the season to figure out which combination of offensive linemen works the best. Or,
Right.
you should be fairly close to, I mean, defensive back is a tough position. You should be close
Yeah.
to figuring that out,
Yeah.
at least at the beginning of the season. You shouldn't have to rotate through tons and tons of players in order to put a consistent lineup out there.
Yeah.
I do genuinely believe that quarterback by committee does not work. There's a reason it doesn't happen
We'll
at
get
any
there.
level of football aside from maybe high school or some college teams who just do it really
Yeah.
well or play. Not,
Yeah, more
you
so
don't do it
back
in a
in the
power
day.
conference. What
Yeah.
is
I
it?
mean, more so years ago.
Yeah.
Like the one example, and Rich Rod even brought this up last year, is Tim Tebow's first national title. He was really the backup, and he played a lot and scored touchdowns. That kind of was a quarterback by committee, and then of course he ascended to being a college football legend. But I mean, they're rare examples. It's been years since that's worked, and we're talking about a Heisman winner here. Like we're not like
Yeah.
this isn't like a regular thing that you'd want to do often. But we'll get into that in a moment, Luke, because the way he was talking, I wouldn't be shocked again if we go down that road, barring injury. I certainly think you're going to have multiple quarterbacks see time this year, even without injury, based on what he's saying.
Yeah, and I mean, if there's a specific way you want to do it, I like whenever I think about that, I don't think you can have it like
Right.
60-40 for
Sure.
snap percentages or like fifty
Sure.
fifty or even 70-30, honestly.
Yeah.
But I really like the way that, I mean, it worked against WVU when Penn State came to town and played Drew Aller and then put
Yeah.
Prabula back there.
That's fair.
If you have
Yeah.
two types of quarterbacks who are so dissimilar in their playing style and things like that, Drew Aller, well, I mean, he turned into a runner against WVU, but traditionally he isn't
His
a
best games
runner
of his
in the,
life were
yeah,
against WVU.
exactly.
Yeah.
And traditionally he's more of a pocket passer, but you put Prabula out there who really
Yeah.
can do different things with his legs, and then they fold WVU, they play the long game, and then have him throw a touchdown pass right down the seam to Tyler Warren, I believe.
Yeah.
So it was, you definitely have the opportunity to do that. If you have a quarterback back there who you believe is a much better runner and you want to run like an option play with him, sure, go ahead. If somebody has a bigger, better arm and you need a long down passing situation, perhaps. But I think it really takes the flow out of the game if you just
Yeah.
don't know who to put out there. And I mean, if
Yeah.
one player makes a mistake and then you sub another guy in until he throws two picks and then you throw another guy in there all just to go back to the guy you started the game with, like we saw in the backyard brawl, that's not going to work every time. And it absolutely didn't, aside from that one instance really for WVU last season.
And the weirdness of this roster, really, your first two quarterbacks, the incumbent Scotty Fox Jr. and then Michael Hawkins Jr., who you brought in as a transfer from Oklahoma, they're very similar. It's not like that example. They're both dual threat athletic quarterbacks, and as Rich has said, there's only one type he's going to work with. Like the
Yeah.
Nico Markiel experiment didn't work. Nico didn't fit what Rich Rod wanted to do or what his system really is, and that was evident outside from the backyard brawl comeback win. But he was really, scheming those plays together on some dirt there. That was really audibles from Nico Markiel. Outside of that, it didn't really work between the two, and of course, Nico Markiel no longer there. So you're not going to be able to hit him with something different. It's going to be more of the same, but a different guy. So we'll see how that works. We'll get more into the quarterback battle and quarterback competition, which is a thing, of course, yet again, going into spring here in a moment. Again, Mountaineer Report, Luke Blain, Mike Asti here, everywhere you get your podcasts and throughout the West Virginia Sports Now network. He did also talk about, to kind of hit on some highlights of the conversation, which is on our channel, on our site as well, and more of my coverage from that talk will be coming, but also already there on the website. That number one, he made it clear that, and this is, something that people assumed, but it's nice to hear the man say it, I guess, if you're a West Virginia fan, just because this was blamed off the issue last year. And it kind of felt like they kind of, in a way, punted the year to kind of cash in here in year two with more importance into year two. And, if that's the case and you win in year two, no one's going to get mad. If you don't, then again, there's more pressure and there's more of a problem. He did mention that, of course, they have more money than a year ago. He made it clear they have more money than a year ago, but they don't have, quote, mess around money, which right now is the quote of the offseason, and we'll see if that gets topped. And that's fair. They're never going to have that. I mean, mess around money is more of Ohio State money, or kind of what Indiana's playing with now, or X program that you want to name, Alabama, Georgia, where they can make a mistake. They can pay for a player that doesn't work out and, oh, no big deal. They can just buy somebody else. That's mess around money. West Virginia is probably never going to have that. But to hear him vocally say, we have more money now, the money is in a way where we can compete. And then again, talks about competing for a Big 12 title. And he's still bringing up that his goal is a national championship. He literally even said, Luke, I'm not backing off of that. That's another quote. He said, I'm not backing off of that. So if you're a fan, I guess you want to hear that, but it puts, again, more pressure on him that a 6-6 season, you're not there yet, of course. So not backing off of that. You need to take a step. I'm not saying everything's going to happen in year two, but we'll see what they do in year two, because it just adds more and more pressure. He made these comments last year and the year went 4-8, and there's some excuses now, but the excuses are not going to be there as much in year 2, especially when he keeps saying the same things. So again, maybe it can happen. The roster is way better. Of course, the roster is way better. So maybe it's more of a possibility to compete and to win more at minimum, at least here in year 2. But he did throw out those big words. Do you like hearing Rich Rod going into year 2 after 4-8 say, I'm not backing off winning a national title. I believe we can win a Big 12 title. Once you get in, it's about coaching in the roster. I'm just as good as anybody else. The money's now better. Now I feel we can compete. We don't have mess around money, but he clearly feels more confident and more comfortable with this team going into year 2 of spring ball. Granted, he said a lot of these same things a year ago, and we saw how that turned out. Do you like hearing this? Do you roll your eyes when you hear this? Do you think this is too much bravado because it didn't work out at all last year and he got egg on his face? Where are you on Rich Rod kicking off spring ball again, talking national championship, when he's coming off of literally one of the worst seasons in program history, certainly this century and certainly for his resume?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you have to think of it from a standpoint of, he's a power conference coach. What else is he supposed to say, right?
True.
You're in the Big 12, probably like one of the conferences where it's easiest to get a
Yeah.
bid
You win
into
it,
the
you get in.
CFP. I mean, you win, you're
Yeah.
in. And
Right.
as long as, none of the G5 teams have any crazy seasons and, you don't have good enough of a season, something like that. But you
Yeah.
have the
For the most
metrics
part.
in your favor because you, on average, are playing much tougher competition than a lot of other conferences in the nation. But I think, yeah,
Yeah, certainly that
it
you would
would,
have that edge over the group of fives for sure.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
So looking at it in the standpoint of, if he were to walk back on his word after saying
That's
that
true.
last year, I think that would almost read as he is less confident than he was a year ago,
Yeah,
which you
fair.
absolutely can't have after a season, like they had last year.
Yeah.
And then, you bringing in worse energy into this season, a season where you had the full off season, like we've already talked about, much more
Yeah.
suitable situation for him to build a team that is more worthy of competing than last year's was. I definitely think you have to look at it, but at the end of the day, if you ask any power conference coach what their goal is going to be, I would imagine that would have to be,
Yeah.
go out there and win the whole thing, unless you're like Northwestern or somebody, like unless you're
Yeah.
Northwestern. But I definitely think that it's
Yeah.
on the table for just about any conference team out there. So you shouldn't have to think of it any differently if you're at West Virginia.
Yeah, and you have to have luck, you have to have the money, you have to have the players, you have to have the coach, you have to have the right infrastructure. Am I picking West Virginia to go ahead and get in the CFP and win a national title right now? Of course not. But yeah, I think your point is valid that if he would have said anything else off of
Yeah.
what he said a year ago, that would look really ridiculous. That would be alarm bells for sure. And aside from Rich Rod, who has pretty much done everything else under the sun in his career, aside from winning a national title, of course, blew it 20 years ago and has the pressure now after such a bad year 1. It's not even just him though. If anybody else would go out there, open up their spring and be like, oh, we're just trying to go 7-5, like we're just trying to get a bowl game, we're hoping we can, get double-digit wins maybe once, in the blue. Like, no, that's not gonna ignite any fan base here. So you do need to do that. You do need to get people to go. You do need to get people excited. This is the spring. This is not the fall. This is not supposed to be the pressure cooker that the fall and the season will be. This is supposed to be a little fun for fans, and they're going to have a spring festival now. They're changing the name from Showcase to Festival now. It's on April 18th. They're going to bring fans. They're going to do kind of a scrimmage. They're going to do a lot of fanfare. A lot of things, again, will be geared towards family, fun. Hopefully the weather is nice. We'll be there. We'll have coverage. That's all kind of what you're looking for in the spring if you're a fan. Granted, building the team, practicing, building the culture, adding it in for the new players, carrying it over for the carryover players or players that at least he knows, making sure the coaching staff is better tuned, having the new additions be, fully involved, especially Deke Adams, who we'll get to in a moment here, who's now going to be the defensive end coach. All that's very, very important to the spring. You cannot go in cold going into the fall, and then you have to have everybody, stay on the up and up when they're not with you throughout the summer. But if he would have said anything else, yeah. I mean, can you imagine if he would have went out there, what's your goal, Rich? And he would have been like, well, winning season. Be like, I'm not excited, Rich. Like, maybe if you, honestly, as bad as 4-8 was in year one, if they didn't have all the injuries, if they would have had maybe Jaheim Whitemore or different things would have went their way, they maybe could have went to a bowl game in 2025. Like, they were close to having the 6 wins, even though they only had the 4. So you got to do more than that to excite anybody here going into year 2, which is a very important year. I do not think that if they have a horrible season, that he necessarily will get fired only 2 years in. But I do think if it's a horrible losing season, that 3 years in will probably be the cap if he does not turn it around then. And I mean, mega turn it around. And we will see what happens. But he also brought up a Bobby Bowden quote, obviously very close to that family. And Bobby Bowden apparently once said that you first have to lose big, then you lose close, then you win close, then you can win big. And Rich Rodriguez said that in this era, because that was the past, and Bobby Bowden, of course, never coached in this NIL transfer portal era, that now he already lost big and there's no time. And this kind of leads me to believe he knows there's pressure. He knows he can't be there for 5 years and just lose and have a ceremonial contract. Ren eventually will have to fire him. That he already has lost big for whatever reason. And now at least he got to start winning close. That was also what Rich Rod said. He knows he cannot go the Bobby Bowden plan of lose big, lose close. Like, this can't be lose close and you're barely in a bowl game in year 2. That's not going to work with this progression off of what, again, he's saying. If we hold people accountable to what they say, that's got to at least be a winning season. So there's more pressure there, but he definitely gets it. He's in a good mood. He's saying the right things. The roster is better, but he definitely knows there's pressure here. Speaking of the roster, and we'll get to the quarterback battle here again in a moment, but they lost a lot more players than they were expecting to lose, or at least off of what Rich Rodriguez was saying at the end of the season. He was not predicting to lose as many players as they did. He did also tell us at his opening press conference for the spring that for the most part, the guys they wanted to keep, they kept, which are few and far between. The guys they wanted to bring in terms of transfer additions, they were able to land. Again, part of them now having more money. They did bring in a lot more Power 4 transfer additions than a year ago, where it was really sprinkling guys in from the lower level. They did really well in high school recruiting, arguably the greatest class in program history for sure. And that's also part of money that's spent. And they have guys on 1, 2, maybe even 3-year deals. He talked about wanting guys on 3-year deals. They have a lot of these players on 2-year deals. So they're likely keeping them. If not, that'll be an issue between the program and them. So that's kind of the goal of make this a maturation process and grow, especially with these young players. But he did admit that there were players that they wanted to keep that they did lose. He said there were, I believe his words were, there were a couple players. There likely more than a couple because they lost so many. How much do you think is coach speak, and how much do you buy that this offseason went according to plan in a way or went awry? Now that we're in the spring, they lost more than he said initially back at the end of the regular season, but he's now kind of poo-pooing it and making it out like, oh, they just lost a few guys that they wanted to keep. I don't know who he didn't mention who those were. The Cam Vaughn speaks to a lot of people bringing up that maybe it's Cam Vaughn he's talking about. But as I said here, I think they were kind of done with him. So I don't know if that's even a player they wanted to keep. But do you buy what Rich is saying, that for the most part, the offseason went according to their plan? They made cuts, they brought in who they wanted to bring in, and that they're happy? Or do you think he's kind of just trying to say that because you're not going to, again, be negative in an opening press conference for the spring? Because they did lose more guys than they were supposed to, and he did kind of admit that there were guys that they lost that they didn't want to lose.
Yeah, well, without speculating who it is that they wanted to keep, I
Yeah,
guess to start, but I I think, there's obviously always room for coach speak in statements like this. I
yeah,
think that's just part of the nature of the job and of the media landscape. And obviously, if he says something like, we wanted to keep Jaheim White, then, of course, then that might
yeah,
throw a wrench in things. But I think that there is a level
sure,
of, you do want to instill that confidence in the players that you have. If you go out there and say, yeah, we wish we would have done a better job in the O line category, the current O
sure,
linemen are going to be like, well, what the heck, man? They're gonna just
Yeah.
kind of have that attitude about it. But I do think that they can take um I don't want to say take pride, but I do definitely think that it looks like they revitalized the positions that they needed to revitalize. They got some new players on defense. You got players, I mean, from power conference schools.
Yeah.
And even at the lower conference schools, you got guys who were big contributors there. I think that is the most important part. And especially after a season last year, you can't expect to flip, players who were supposed to go to who were at SEC schools and might have
Yeah.
opportunities at other SEC schools. You're still very much fighting your way up the totem pole there. I think that within reason of expectation, they had a good offseason. I think that
Yeah, it's
that's fair
hard
to
to
say.
say. It's hard
So,
to say they
yeah.
didn't. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I definitely think that, you obviously wish every signing could be that home run, game-changing signing, but that's obviously not going to be the case.
Yeah.
So I don't, and Rich Rod's the kind of guy who doesn't sugarcoat it, obviously within reason. And even to admit, like, yeah, there are some guys that, you wanted to hang on that, kind of
Yeah.
were the ones that got away, then it's like, for him to say that, I think is still a little bit of that Rich Rod brand of honesty. But I absolutely think that they're in a position to, work through that.
He does drop you some nuggets of honesty, more so than
Yeah.
maybe other coaches out there. And he's a little different now in his older years than he was during his first tenure that he was at Arizona, at Michigan, at Jacksonville State. So this is a little different. This is, as he says, this is his last school, his last deal, his last go of it. He's more of just laying it out there. There's no reason to fully just lie and not be honest with either what's going on or what he wants to say, which again, you got to like whether you're a media member or a fan. You're not being sold lipstick on a pig if it's not there. This roster is legitimately, it's not Rich Rod only saying it, it is being said nationally, it is being said all over. This roster is legitimately better than a year ago. It would be hard for it not to have been, but they had a good offseason. Yeah, every school is going to lose players they wanted to keep. So for him to admit that is good, is true, is honest. But any coach out there, especially at a similar program, maybe not at a elite, but at a similar program, who would say, "Oh, we didn't lose anybody that we wanted to keep. Everything was perfect." You're just you're just blowing smoke. So Rich Rod at least is being honest in that regard. Now, did they lose more players than just a couple? A couple, to be literal here, Luke, a couple's two, a few is three or more. Like, I feel like it's more than two people, but he's not gonna, lend us too much honesty, I guess. You still gotta have some code speak here. So I think that was important to hear from him, but also because there was so much confusion among fans, why he said we're only going to have to add 12 guys. And then all of a sudden, we're sitting there covering it. We're throwing texts in the group chat. We're writing articles here. And it's like, I'm 40 deep. This isn't 12, Rich. I don't know what's going on. So some things went a little different, than the plan, at least what he was saying at that time. But as you're saying, the most important thing here is, regardless what is totally reality in terms of who they wanted to keep and who left and what that number really looks like, that really doesn't matter. What matters for this team now in 2026 is what you're saying. They built a roster, whether it be incumbent players or new players, for the most part, off of power four quality players mixed in with contributors from the group of five level. And of course, you have some JUCO and FCS guys sprinkled there underneath that are mostly just depth pieces. A year ago, the FCS and JUCO guys were likely going to be starters. They were competing to be starters. The group of five guys that came over, they didn't yet contribute in college ball. They were just purely trying to get elevated. There were some power four guys, but they ended up not working out, and they just didn't get as much time to really do recruiting. And Zach Alley put it, we were pretty much speed dating all through that season because they had their intro presser December 20th and the whole thing was truncated. And then players they brought in, they either lost or they kicked off the team after spring ball with cuts. This is your group now. So I also think, Luke, not having the second transfer portal window, not only does it help you keep your players that you want to keep and doesn't allow them to get poached by a bigger program, which is obviously always an issue, it also saves Rich Rod from himself. because Rich Rod was a little happy with cutting players left and right last year. Yeah, some left, but I will here to tell you a lot of them were cut as well. So now he can't do that really. Like if somebody dogs it and gets lazy one day of spring ball and he wants to cut them, you can find a way to get him off the team, but he might have to stick with the guy a little bit more, which I think is better for the plan of the program for consistency. So he's saved from himself a little bit. Luke Blain, Mike Asti here talking Mountaineer football now open, at least for the spring ball now in session for Rich Rodriguez and company here in year 2. We'll get to basketball and maybe some baseball here at the back half of the show. I do want to touch on the quarterback battle some more now. Michael Hawkins Jr. comes over. Scotty Fox Jr. is the incumbent. Even brought up Max Brown being there. I mean, he's not really in the mix, but Rich Rod, of course, are going to bring him up. While there are more positions solidified and it's not as insane as it was a year ago with a 80-plus transfer, this is it's half of that. It's still crazy, but it's not nearly what it was a year ago. The quarterback battle is still the same. It's still a quarterback battle, new guys, but still a quarterback battle for the most part. How do you view it? I mean, we're not in Rich Rod's head. He's not going to admit anything, so it's hard to say what the situation is here before I even get to practice in person, and he's not going to tell us who's 1A and 1B right now. If you could guess, who do you think has the edge here? What do you think should occur? I mean, for me, I think Scotty Fox improved last year. He showed some flashes. I find it hard to believe they bring in Michael Hawkins Jr., pay him what they're paying him, have him be a former 4-star recruit, have him come from an SEC historic program in Oklahoma, and not have him be the guy, at least with the leg up, to at least have the job be his at the open of spring ball, and Scotty got to steal it from him. Maybe that's not reality. Maybe he'll play the best guy. Maybe Scotty will win the job. But if I had to bet right now, I would put my money on Michael Hawkins Jr. being that game 1 starter. We're months away from that, though.
Yeah, I think that, Michael Hawkins Jr. being where he is in his collegiate career, I obviously think he has the edge from a person like a developmental standpoint in the way he's built, the way he plays. Only 2 seasons in, going to be a junior this season. I think that, there's absolutely he has the edge in terms of a resume of what he's been able to do in a field, a better one than Scotty Fox has been able to put out there. But obviously, Scotty Fox was in on the quarterback carousel of the season that WVU had last year.
Right.
So, but, I think that there is something to be said for the fact that Scotty Fox is back. And you have a full off season of working with him. Maybe he needs another year of sitting behind Michael Hawkins, and then he's ready to take over the starting role after a year or 2. But does he want to wait that long? If he, if he's not the starting quarterback this year, and Michael Hawkins decides to stick around for another year, what is he going to have the next year? I mean, he'll probably have his senior year, maybe a couple more years of eligibility after a redshirt season. I don't know, but you just have to think that maybe from a personal standpoint and from a schematic standpoint, and understand Rich Rod's system, Scotty Fox gets the edge right now. But from an overall, who's ready to go out there and just run around and sling the ball, you have to think that that's probably Michael Hawkins at this point.
Yeah, and he spent more time talking about Michael Hawkins at his intro spring presser. Granted, he's the new guy. We asked more about him. We kind of already know Scotty Fox, but he mentioned Michael Hawkins really impressing him, being so smart, learning the plays, picking up the playbook. That's a big, important thing to Rich Rodriguez. Again, I think that was an issue with Nico Marchiol. Like, you got to know the playbook, fit into what he wants to do, learn what he wants to do. It's his offense. He's the grandfather of this thing, and it really takes the right guy to be Rich Rod's quarterback. So to be complimented that you're so smart and have learned it so quickly, only being there a few weeks, also kind of maybe is a tell from Rich Rod that he's legitimately impressed with Michael Hawkins Jr. He mentioned knowing him for a while, not knowing him personally, but knowing he's an athlete, knowing coaches that have coached him. Rich Rod even mentioned Luke, and he won't tell us who the other guys were, and maybe this also speaks to having a little bit more money to play with. He mentioned that there were several other transfer quarterbacks similar to Michael Hawkins Jr. that they could pick from, and they picked Michael Hawkins Jr. So he's claiming that they had more options than just Michael Hawkins Jr. and that we don't know who they were, but there were other guys that they could have brought in. That's also a kind of a positive if you're a fan of the program, that it's not like they're taking the scrap heap in terms of former prospects that are at Power 4 programs as veterans to come over. He's claiming that they had a little bit of their pick and they were able to choose him over other guys. Again, that means they went through a longer evaluation process. This wasn't purely speed dating like a year ago, all of that. And Scotty Fox had his ups, had his downs, a lot of talent, a lot of speed, also really fits into the offense. A good kid too, had his moments. He's already been there. You imagine that gives him a leg up also with Rhett Rodriguez, who's back because they worked together a year ago. Michael Hawkins Jr. has not. I just can't see paying Michael Hawkins Jr. all this money and sitting him down. And I think this also is part of what he's trying to also let us know, that I'm going to play the guy that gives us the best chance to win. But if they're both ready to win, he's going to give them both time on the field. And that is going back to what we said at the open of the show. That could be fine. That could work. That could be a problem. But I would imagine both these guys see time. And I also imagine early in the spring, that's also part of coach speak to the players, Luke. Like, he's not going to go out there the opening spring presser and be like, well, Scotty has a big edge, Michael. I don't know why you're even here. Like, you're way behind the 8 ball. He wants both these players to like, we can play. We have a chance to play. We're both going to see the field. I think he wants to dangle some optimism to him here, day 1 or 2 in, before he fully slaps him around with hard edge here. Again, Luke Blain, Mike Asti, Mountaineer Report, talking West Virginia now in the midst of spring ball. Now, I do want to also get to, and this is not so much what's going to go on in the spring because it's kind of done with, at least from the old coach, but now the new coach will be there. And Deke Adams, as I mentioned, he's the defensive end coach. He comes over from the SEC, a long background. I mean, the man was the major position coach with Javavian Clowney, if you remember, when he was a top pick in the NFL. So he has a long lineage of working with pass rushers. That's been a problem for the Mountaineers for a couple years, going from Rich Rod to Neil Brown. The transfer additions from last year that were supposed to be part of the pass rush and be great for the pass rush, that never really worked out. That was a problem for West Virginia. So Deke Adams comes over from Arkansas. Like, he has a long background of being successful with the pass rush. However, he was the second choice here. Like, let's be real about this. He was available the whole offseason, didn't get hired until the guy you bring in initially leaves, and then you bring in Deke Adams. And Rich Rod even mentioned that he was surprised that Deke Adams was still available. So he's a great coach to have, but he did add some clarity to Larry Knight being there, Larry Knight coming aboard, Larry Knight being announced, there being a press release. I will brush my shoulders off. I initially broke the news, and he's gone. I don't even get to meet the man in person. Granted, talked to him a little bit. But he was there for 36 days off the announcement, and he's gone to Georgia. Now he's going home, but of course, that's a higher profile program. Rich kind of laughed it off. He said Kirby Smart called him. We talked about this before on a past show, but now that you hear from Rich Rod, he says Kirby called him. He kind of laughs it off. It's no big deal to him. He's happy with Deke Adams. Any other thoughts on just the oddness of having a coach there get announced, leave after a month, not even make it to spring ball, leave for another Power 4 school, you bring another guy in? I mean, obviously Deke Adams is a solid coach with a great resume, but he was not your first hire. He was not your first choice. Like, it just clearly the case. I mean, like, if you propose to one girl, but you proposed to another an hour earlier, she said no, and now you're on to the second. How special does the second one feel? She gets the ring, but she wasn't your first option.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that could also put a chip on the shoulder of Deke Adams in this situation,
Yeah,
right? I
could be.
obviously think that, you're obviously happy to work anywhere as a coach, really,
Yeah,
especially at a P4 school and a guy with a
yeah,
resume like his,
yeah,
who, is specifically looking at the way the defense performed last year and the way that they really could have used more from the edge rushers
yeah,
and the pressure getters on that defensive line. I think having this would be a really interesting opportunity for Adams. And I think that he can have some fun with this position group, honestly.
yeah.
And but I definitely, really, it just kind of seems like maybe you have to almost treat it like that position was never filled. You know what I mean? Like, you just got to kind of take it as it is and
Yeah, he
move
was in the
on.
hotel. I don't think he even moved anywhere. Like,
Yeah,
Rich Rod even said he had some meals and I had a meeting with him, and that's it. He didn't really get to know him. So
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is an odd situation, not one that you really see happen all that often, but ultimately, I mean, it is kind of a situation where it can't go wrong. I would be really interested to see what led them to, Larry, name's
Larry
escaping
Knight.
me.
Yeah, Larry
Larry Knight,
Knight.
yes.
Yeah,
I was
initially,
thinking,
yeah.
I kept wanting to say Larry Harrison because I'm in basketball mode, but
Yeah. That's
La-
years ago. That's your Larry Harrison, a
yeah,
good
I know.
guy, but yeah,
But
former Huggins
Larry
staffer.
Knight, but
Yeah.
I would really be interested to see what made him the favorite for the job over Adams the first time around. But I think two guys with that extensive resumes, I don't think you can really go wrong with this pick.
Yeah, I mean the difference between the two, Larry Knight's younger. Larry Knight's
Yeah,
more of an up and comer. Larry Knight's maybe you could argue less of a sexy hire. I mean, Deke Adams has the resume. He has a top draft pick under his belt in this century. So, like, he's older, he's been around longer, but and he just got ushered out. I mean, he was removed mid-season, I believe, last year when Arkansas brought Petrino back. So it's not like I mean, they did kind of usher him out the door. He was part of a staff that then exited. They didn't have the greatest success. Granted, his resume is good, so maybe that's part of how he was available. He had the stain of that, but Rich Rod ended up landing, regardless of the situation, he ended up landing on a solid coach with a great track record who's still hungry to do this, who you mentioned maybe has more gas in the tank and is maybe more hungry to prove himself from the Arkansas situation, from being Rich Rod's second choice. And he's a specialized at something. He doesn't have to worry about everything else under the sun. That's all good. It does tell me a couple other things, though, Luke. I remember when we talked about this and Larry Knight's departure. I think you even said, and I might even have agreed, that maybe you just don't replace the position at all right now. It's not like defensive coordinator. You could just power through, use the money for a player, move on. Zach Alley's supposed to be this elite defensive coach. A lot of pressure on him also in year two. But the fact that they replaced it tells me two things. Number one, as you were saying, they know they have to have an emphasis on the pass rush. It got to be better. They got to get to the quarterback more. Doesn't matter who's doing it. They got to be better in that aspect. The edge rushers got to be better. So they clearly said to themselves when Larry Knight left unceremoniously, as a surprise to them, they were not expecting it. And yes, he went home, so it's not like he just took a better job. Kirby called him. There's no ill will there. I truly believe that. I even have heard from sources that know Larry Knight that it wasn't to screw over WVU. It wasn't that he hated WVU. It was simply that he wanted to go home. And how can you turn down a chance to go home? Of course, when that's the recent national champion, that helps too in Georgia. So it all worked out for Larry Knight in a way, and I don't think he meant to hurt Rich Rod or WVU. It would have been a great job for him even in West Virginia if he didn't have the Georgia opportunity. But it shows me they really had an emphasis on replacing it. Actually, this shows me three things. One, that they really had an emphasis on replacing that coaching position because they really need a better pass rush. That really, really is clear that they did not want all that on Zach Alley's plate. He has to relinquish some duties, and that really needs improved. Clear. Number two, and I remember you said this when we originally talked about Larry Knight's exit, there's a little bit of a glass half full compliment take to this. Clearly, the people that Rich Rodriguez is trying to elevate are the right guys to look at around the country if somebody that you didn't know that you brought in then gets poached by Kirby Smart and Georgia. It's not like you lost him to, Pitt or a rival or a similar program. You lost him to Georgia. Georgia. They get who they want. It's Georgia. But clearly they think he's a good coach or they wouldn't poach him. They're not just going to let him go home and sit there and do nothing. They want to win ball games. And there's pressure off what they just did in the CFP to even be better. So that's a compliment to you that at least your evaluation of the coaches is right. If Kirby Smart thinks the guy's good enough to coach under under him and on his staff. And then number three, and this goes back to kind of the theme here of the money being better. Granted, still not mess around money, still not perfect, still need more. Clearly, they evaluated finances and said, we got enough money to play with here. We're not going to pay Larry Knight anymore. We like our roster still. We got some money still left over for a staffer. We're going to use it. I mean, if this was a broke program, it's a poor program, but if it was a broke program, if it was like when Neil Brown was there and they had 3.5 in the NIL bank, which is a drop in the bucket for winning programs, they would have said, we need that money. We got to use it for other things. Like, we're thrilled to not have to spend it. No, they're using it because they have a little bit more to play with now. So, yeah, it's still, still small market if you're talking pro sports, but there's more there now. I think that's evident by replacing the position and still spending that money on that position when it's not a necessity, in a way, requirement, even though you need it and it needs to be a spot that's better for you. We're going to talk to Rich Rod more. We're going to finally get there in person. He's still tight with the freaking, practices and what he lets media see, but we're going to get more than last year, I imagine. A lot of pressure, a lot going on. They have their Mountaineer Olympics. Kevin Brown's lifting 665 for crying out loud. He's squatting 665, sorry. So we have that article up on the site. I mean, obviously this is a stronger, bigger team, a bigger, stronger line, if nothing else. There are still some things that need figured out, but that's a big deal. This team wasn't big enough. It's been a program from Brown to Rod has been undersized for years. If you remember when they were even jokingly called a MAC school, granted that was the year that they had success before 2023. This is a bigger team. No one's going to say this is the size of a MAC team. They are legit in terms of their size. Do they have the talent? Do they win games? Do they translate? All of that remains to be seen. Luke Blain, Mike Asti here, Mountaineer Report, West Virginia Sports Now, and we're now going to pivot to the team that is in the middle of their year one season under a new coach. The program that right now looked like they were going to be better off than what Rich Rod put together for the football program in year one. And there was some positive. There still really is reason for some positive, some optimism for the future. Maybe a program that's in a better position to win immediately in year two. But a program that right now is in the midst of, a down trek here. And it looks like they're going to have their bubble popped. It looks like they're going to ruin their spot at a chance at the NCAA tournament. You had that Utah loss recently. That was awful. It probably popped it for them. They then got back on the bubble with a win over BYU and a top draft pick in the NBA in Debansa. And then you lose at Kansas State to a team that had a couple conference wins, and that was it. A horrible loss. There's no other way to cut it. It's on the road, but still, it's really, really bad. They blew a lead. You allow a 20-0 run in there. You open up the first half real sluggish. You have your scoring droughts. You come back at the end, but the possessions at the end were still something to be desired, and you do lose. You're likely not getting in now. So before we get to the full-on evaluation of the program right now after year one, what are your thoughts now after the Kansas State game, and what were they prior to the game? Because it seemed like there was some optimism among the fans that, they're back in this thing. They could get in, and that would be wonderful for year one. And then you'll watch the Kansas State game, and you're just sitting there saying, yep, the optimism, it's gone. That's really how some fans were reacting to what they saw, and you can't blame them. That was a really, really bad loss.
Yeah, it looked like the team really had this sort of second win after the BYU game, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that,
That's the vibe.
you really swung up to your competition. You got out there and you played a complete game at home. It was a
Yeah.
good win. I mean,
Yeah.
the defensive, it looked like the defensive mindset was really paying off in the way they limited Debansa, at least for a half. And, they were able to get a lead
Yeah.
and then play with it. And
Yeah.
then they finished it off, all things that they had struggled with at prior times this season.
Yep.
And then you just totally revert back to it against Kansas State. You play down to your competition. I think that that's the best way to frame the way this season has gone for WVU this season. I think that, they have just flat out played down to whoever they play, whether it be in the non-conference. I mean, obviously, with exception to the mid majors, but when it comes to power teams, whether it be Wake Forest, Clemson, Ohio State, Xavier, you've lost to three of the bottom four Big 12 teams this season. I mean, I that 8 minute 21-0 run for Kansas State, I think is the worst 8 minute, like 10 minute stretch of basketball that this team's played all year. Like you went over half of the second half with only 4 field goals made. There were just the and that was coming after a first half that was decent. Like they forced a 6 minute Kansas State scoring drought, didn't do enough with it. Ross Hodge talked about that after the game in the post game, and I think that's very true. But I think that the cracks of being so defensive minded have really shown in recent games, specifically in the fact that it doesn't really seem like the offense has gotten better on a team that coming into the season, I personally felt like had a pretty high offensive ceiling.
Yeah, you were very high on the team coming into the
I
season,
was. I
but
was,
yeah, I
and
mean
I'll admit it. Yeah.
there was some reason for that, and again, they blew some games in the non-conference play that if they would have won, certainly the Clemson game, definitely Ohio State, they would be in a better position metric wise right now. They probably would even maybe still get in despite these recent losses. These losses are worse than those non-con losses. Like these are really, really bad. The Utah loss and losing to Kansas State are the two that really stand out. I mean, the other ones are swing game losses. You do have the BYU win. You have the Baylor game. Like, there were some big moments. Yeah, you don't like the performance against TCU. Yeah, Oklahoma State. But swing games aren't as big of a deal. They didn't drop as much, even metric wise, there in Ken Palm. And granted, they didn't drop tons after losing to Kansas State, but that just felt like the death nail. That really did. If Utah was not already the death nail for this program. And like Ross Hodge said, which it does give you concern, granted, it's going to be a whole new team that comes back next year, but it felt like there was a lack of sense of urgency. Ross Hodge even said this. Ross Hodge basically said it. There was a lack of urgency on his team, especially in the second half. They got back on the bubble. They made up for their issues. They had a big win under their belt. Yeah, they're on the road, but they're the better team. They're the more talented team. Kansas State, before the game, had an announcement that one of their best players was going to miss. They were down at halftime, and yet it almost looked like, if you watch the second half, Luke, that Kansas State was the team on the bubble, and West Virginia had their season already over. It kind of flipped. So it did look like there was a lack of urgency. It did look like that sometimes they don't have an urgency either in the middle of plays or just throughout the game or whatever. I mean, we've seen that actually throughout the season where, sometimes it's like, look at the clock, guys. Like, let's hurry it up here. They just didn't have that urgency, especially late in that second half. But early on, the offense just doesn't have consistency enough to avoid those droughts. So it was a rough loss, no matter how you slice it. Based on what you've seen, though, this year, you were really high going in. It's been a roller coaster ride. We've seen some peaks, we've seen some valleys. I don't think this is a tournament team. Similar to last year in terms of the season. Last year, 19 wins. They missed the tournament. They really should have got in, but they were snubbed. 6 quad one wins, 3 top 10 wins. This team has, 4 or 5 quad one wins as we're speaking right now. It doesn't have the cachet of the top 10 wins of last year's team under DeVries because they got blown out to those teams. But how do you evaluate this year overall, and what's your thought process of the Ross Hodge era now going into year 2? Because breaking news, he's not going to be fired. He's going to be back. There will be a year 2. He's recruited pretty well so far, certainly high school-wise. They have a 5-star coming in, as insane as that sounds for the Mountaineer program. But this is a blown opportunity to make the tournament this year. They really should have got in with everything that's gone on. Every adversity, they still should have got in. This team was good enough to get in. They had enough in front of them. They should have got in. They blew enough games to not get in, but they should have got in this year. And now there's pressure that year 2 really has to be a tournament season. I mean, we're saying that Rich Rod has to have a winning season, at least contend in year 2 to have you comfortable. Year 2 under Hodge, I would say at minimum you got to be on the bubble, if not make the NCAA tournament. Really, you got to get in. We cannot keep having this 4 or 5 year drought for a program with 31 appearances in its history. But where now are you on the season and Ross Hodge going into year 2?
I think my main takeaway is you can't go another year without having an offensive identity. And I think that that is what this team has really lacked this year. I mean, there's not really anything that the team does on offense that they particularly lean on that is effective other than getting the ball to Honor Huff and letting him hit the craziest 3 you've ever seen. I think like from an outsider looking in, and I'm not a basketball expert, you had the reason I was so high on this team was it looked like you had enough talent there to choose how you want to play offense. And you just beyond the realm of having somebody post up with under 10 seconds left on the shot clock until a double team comes their way and finding the open man. Because that is what happens oftentimes with this offense. Or just getting the ball to Honor Huff in the last few seconds of the shot clock and letting him try something crazy. There needs to be more identity in terms of players getting to spots on the court with intention and importance behind them. And I'm not saying they don't do
Yeah.
that at all. I just don't think it happens enough for a Big 12 team that is looking to compete in this conference
Yeah.
because, perfect offense is going to beat perfect defense every single time. And they played some good defense against teams like Arizona
Yeah.
and Houston. They were able to make things a little scrappy with some of those games, but you
Yeah.
look at the final score and it's pretty obvious how the game went in terms of offensive performance for WVU. Their I think top five in defense in the nation, and they're somewhere below 300 in offense on the year.
Yeah.
And you need to
I
have
mean, they were in
way
the top
more.
10 most of the year. I don't know if they're
Yeah,
5 now, but they've been in the top 10 most of the year. Yeah.
yeah, and you have to have more semblance of a balance. And part of it
Yeah.
is some players just flat out didn't live up. Trace and Staff hasn't lived up.
No.
And I personally was a lot higher on Harlan Obioha than he ended up proving this season.
Yeah.
And of course, the season isn't over. They still have an opportunity to do something crazy, and we saw NC State do it a few years ago.
Yeah.
So I don't want to talk about the season like it's over. There's definitely still a chance for WVU, but you're not going to get, I don't think you're going to get an at-large bid. Even if you go out there and make the Big 12 conference championship, I just don't think you'll have the resume that you need in order to make it. And that just comes from, like I mentioned earlier, when they played down to their opponents. But
Yeah.
that's just a roundabout way of saying that there needs to be more emphasis on offense next year. I don't have a problem with defense. I actually like defense. I love
Yeah.
having. I
It's
played.
won in this conference. Houston
Yeah.
won that way. Granted, the difference with Houston is they hang their hat on defense, but if you look at some of their scores in their NCAA tournament run all the way to the title game, they had a game where they scored over 90 points in
Yep.
last year's run. So everyone has a belief that they're doing it off of defense, and that's right. But their offense is light years better than West Virginia's. You got to
Yep.
balance it out more than this. You cannot go through 6 minute scoring droughts. You're barely scoring 60 points in a game in today's basketball. You're not going to win enough. I mean,
Yeah.
there's teams that can hang 80. And yes, here's the issue. If you have the greatest defense in the world and the team normally scores 80 and you hold them to 65, great. But if you only score 63, 60, whatever, barely get to 60, you still don't win. And wins and losses is still the most important thing here, regardless of the metrics. So, yeah, I mean, it's clear they need to focus in on offense more. And again, to the point that they just didn't pan out. And maybe this is similar to a Rich Rodriguez thing. He didn't have the full offseason because he did come in. He was coaching the NIT for a while, and you can say what you want that he should have left that in the middle. He didn't. He was still recruiting for West Virginia, but he wasn't coming aboard until late in the recruiting cycle. You bring in Eagle Staff, who had a 40-point game, a 50-point game last year, granted at a lower level. You imagine he's going to do much more offensively this year. It's been hot and cold. He had a game where he scored 1 point. He had a game where he didn't take a shot. I mean, he's had some games with 20 points, but it's been up and down with him. He's been a miss. Honor Huff really be better as your number 2. Him being your number 1, he's too damn small. And there's some mental lapses there, but he plays really hard. He's a great scorer. He's fun to root for. They don't, again, have enough size. Obioha was great in the brawl, great early in the season.
Yeah.
He's kind of regressed since then, and that's been a big deal. They've had others emerge. DJ Thomas, Chance Moore has really emerged to be a beast out there and arguably be their best player in recent games. Granted, he's also missed some key free throws, but offensively, there's just not enough there. All the players that I mentioned will be better suited as undercards to a star. Here's what I'm saying. And you couldn't make this happen because of eligibility, and Javon Small is doing his thing in the NBA. But if you put Javon Small on this team, they're a tournament team. They're maybe a chance at a Sweet 16 type of team. You need to get a Power 4 legit player. And I don't mean get a Cooper Flag, like you're never going to get that. I mean, get a Javon Small. Javon Small was a Power 4 transfer from Oklahoma State. He was not their best player. He was their second or arguably their third best player. But he was able to be elevated to now be the best player on another Big 12 program. And DeVries brought him in, and you can give that credit to DeVries, or you probably don't want to and just say that Small came over because he wanted to, but you have to in some way give recruiting credit to DeVries. There was no other connection for Small to come aboard West Virginia. He's not from West Virginia or WVU or anything like that, but he carried the team for a long stretch with Tucker DeVries out, and that overall roster not really good enough either without how well he was playing. He was legit a Big 12 Conference Player of the Year candidate for a while. Legit. People maybe will forget that now. That type of player. Like, you need that. And you can recruit that. Like, you can get the third best player from a Power Four, just one kid, and maybe give him the rock, give him an opportunity to lead a team, and then have everybody else filter around him and below him. That could maybe get you in the tournament. I'm not saying that gets you a Final Four, but that could at least get you in the tournament. Javon Small on this team would at least be a tournament team. And that's kind of at least where you need to be next year. And that player wasn't here. That player wasn't here. I mean, you elevating players from North Texas, from North Dakota, etc. Yes, other Power Four schools did want them. Eagles other options. Kentucky looked at him for a while. With that said, you needed to get the Javon Small. You don't have the Javon Small. You need that Power Four kid. So they need to focus on offense. They already got the top high school recruit coming in. They need to retain their guys. You got to retain Thomas and Chance Moore. You want to retain them, I'd imagine. And then you want to get a stud. Again, doesn't have to be the conference player of the year, the country player of the year. It doesn't have to be that guy. But you need to get a Javon Small type of player to come aboard. You did not really have that this year. And then here's something that got to go to coaching too, and I'm sure they teach it. You got to do it more. Simply put, Luke, regardless of Eagle staff being a roller coaster, of Honor Huff being undersized, of Obioha being a roller coaster, of the team somehow losing rebound battles, even if they would have a side edge under the basket, blowing games they shouldn't blow, missing opportunities, despite all of that. They'd probably be an NCAA tournament team if they would just hit more free throws. I mean, that killed them at the end of Kansas State. Free throws sunk this team.
Yeah.
I mean, simply, if they just hit more free throws, they likely would have swung a game or two, and they're going to be off the bubble and miss a game or two out. Like, they're right there, even with these recent losses.
Yeah.
So that's an annoyance for fans. And you can say that's player, you can say that's the coach, but whatever the hell it is, the players that are on the team next year and the players that are coming back, like Chance Moore might come back. Chance Moore has been a real free throw problem. He is a beast otherwise, but I mean, 1 for 2 is like all you're hoping for with Chance Moore at this point. Like, that can't be you if you're trying to get in the tournament. You got to hit free throws. No one's defending you. It is you in the basket. It is just you in the basket, like you're in your backyard. Like, that's the one moment that you can equalize yourself with a fan who maybe can say they can do that. They can't, but it's still, that's just a free throw. A free throw. It says free. It's not free to West Virginia. So, like, that has to be corrected. You cannot be missing that many free throws while you're losing games you shouldn't lose. It's not like they're just losing to the top teams. They're losing to some swing or worse teams, programs that are worse than you, and you're missing free throws on top of it. You got to fix that. That got to be a big point of emphasis in the offseason, that whoever's on the roster, Hodge got to be out there, Jace Harrell got to be out there, whoever you want to name got to be out there, making them take 100 free throws a day at minimum all the damn time. Like, that cannot be a problem again, because free throws really sunk this team regardless of everything else. Again, Luke Blain, Mike Asti here, Mountaineer Report via West Virginia Sports Now. We'll just briefly touch on, and there's a lot of misreporting, a lot of rumors going on with Chase Meyer being kicked off the baseball team. So there's even a chance, by the way, that I'll say that maybe he comes back to the team. His mom is even putting that out there, that apparently there's going to be a conversation with Sabins again. This team is still winning. This team is a contender. This team's going to be in the thick of things. Yeah, they blew a game recently, but they're still going to be a quality team and be right up there in the Big 12 race. So even losing him, granted, he was going to be a pitcher they were going to rely on, and they did last year, I don't think it sinks the team overall. What I do want to ask you, and what I do want to talk about briefly here, is Steve Sabins is in year 2 of this thing. He had an historic season in year 1, wins record, super regional. You can't ask for much more for young coach in year 1. He even took over for his predecessor and kind of topped him with an outright regular season conference title, put something on the wall. But he kicked a player off the team last year. Now kicking Meyer off this team, assuming he doesn't come back, regardless of what anyone believes happened, because by the way, I'll tell you, it's not just one incident. More things happened. You don't get kicked off a team for one incident.
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah,
It
like
is.
that's impossible to
People don't
believe.
realize how insanely hard it is to kick a scholarship athlete off of a team.
Yeah, like you're not. You
Like-
could hate the man. Like you're not going to have one incident, one comment about. I will agree they should never have scheduled a game against Marshall at Marshall when they're already going to go to them once. They're going to host them another time and play a neutral. There's no reason to give them 2 home games and you get 1. That's insane. But the game didn't happen and won't happen anyway. God didn't want that to happen. I think God was like, "This is crazy. Let me get rid of that game." But separate from that, like even if hypothetically you had a player upset about that, you had some shit talk going on in the locker room, like that's not going to be enough. There was multiple incidents. There's other incidents. People saying that, oh, now the game got canceled against Marshall. You lose a player for nothing. It's just not true. There were other things that happened that led up to it. But what I want to bring up here is his mother. This is not reporting. His mother publicly said and confirmed from her that Steve Sabins let Chase Meyer know he was off the team via text message. This also goes kind of to what he did a year ago. Any thoughts on the reputation that Steve Sabins is building a little bit for himself? He's a young up-and-coming coach in the sport, and I get he wants to exert himself. He's closer to these kids' age. He probably doesn't want to have them run over him. He's a different generation than Randy Mazey. That could be part of it in his brain, that like Mazey's kind of like their father age. I'm more of an older brother. I don't want them to take advantage of me. But it's almost like he's trying too hard to be a tough coach, and he's coming across a little bit like a dick. Like, I think he's a really nice guy. He's a great coach. He's going to be there as long as he wants to be there, clearly. But I don't have any other way to describe it. I mean, I'll say that regardless of what happened, whether it's 1 incident, 17 incidents, as long as there's no illegal action going on here, you probably should do a face-to-face thing, at least via Zoom or FaceTime, with the kid to kick him off the team when he's a scholarship athlete who won a lot of games for you a year ago. A text message is just a little bit Bush League way to do it. That just is. And that's what the mother's saying. So that's not off anyone else's reporting. Unless she's lying, that just seems rough. What are your thoughts on the rep that Sabins is building right now? Because I don't like sending a text message to kick a kid off a team if that's what happened, regardless of what led up to it.
Yeah, assuming that is the case, like I'm gonna, like
yeah. I mean, again, the mother
yeah.
said it. It's not off anyone's
Right.
reporting. The mother is the one who said that it was a text message. Just taking the mother at her word. This is not anyone else's reporting.
Taking the mother at her word, I definitely think that that's a bit off. I do always, I'm very pro face-to-face things like that. I think it's a good thing. Like I like that this show isn't just over audio. I like to be able to like
Right.
actually see and speak to people. And I think
Right.
that there's a certain level of respect that comes with that.
Right.
And I'm not going to say, like I don't want to use the term disrespectful to describe Steve Sabins. I
Sure.
think that there's obviously something deeper than what a lot of people understand and think they understand. And
Yeah,
I think
probably.
that is a sad byproduct of social media, is that somebody will say something with
Yeah.
with unfounded evidence and everybody will take it and run with it because
Yeah, that's the
they
thing.
want to have the answer as soon as possible.
You get
And
purely speculation. Literally one person put something out there, and then we even got here off the game being canceled of, oh, well, this means that, we lost a player for nothing in terms of West Virginia fans. It's like they took one report as gold with nothing else put in there. And again, I'm not even saying that what was said in there is 100% not true on that one event, but I can guarantee you, and I know for sure, it was not just one incident that had him kicked off this team, which is what it was reported as. So people taking that as gold is nuts right now. And that is the unfortunate part of our reality. That is unfortunate. Yeah. I mean, you literally have people who are fake. I don't mean this reporter, but I'm just saying in general right now, you have people that are fake reporters that are then apologizing for their fake report on social media and gaining more engagement. That's happening all across the country right now. Like, it's all about engagement, unfortunately, more than journalism these days. And people just believe in whatever's online. Like, you can't just automatically believe what's online. Like, you can't. And that's where we are right now. But
not that WVU has any fake reporters out there, right?
right, not that West
But
Virginia would. Yeah, I mean, not that
not
they
that
have
would
that at
ever
all.
happen.
Although,
But
yeah, there's not too many apologies from that direction. But yeah, we'll digress.
yeah, but no, I definitely like there's way more. I think there's way more nuance to this situation
Yeah,
than just Steve Sabins heard Chase Meyer talking trash one time and then sends him a text and then he's off the team. There's
yeah,
something way more to this.
can't
Would
be.
I prefer it? Like if I were in his shoes, would I have scheduled an in-person meeting? Yeah, sure. But I think that, there's
At
levels
least a
to it.
FaceTime, like at least a
Yeah,
FaceTime. I feel like if you can't do in person, I feel like at
yeah,
least a FaceTime. Like
yeah,
technology wise, there's no way you can't get in person with somebody, even if it's virtual
yeah.
today. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I think I can get on with that. I think that I just think that the context of the conversation is just totally flawed in
yeah,
that everybody thinks it's like point A, point B, point C,
you're
when
right.
really there has to be something deeper under the surface. You just can't, like, there's not a coach in America at any level of sport in college athletics that can get a scholarship athlete kicked off the team just for talking trash behind his back
Right, like, it
one
happens all over
time.
the place.
Like,
It
that
happens
is
all the
not
time.
that
Yeah,
that that is not how it works. Like, that
happens
is
all the
just flat
time.
out not how it works. And
What I will
that
say
that
is, if and didn't happen that way, if that would all be the case, if that would be it, if that is all that it took, then Steve Sabins is very thin-skinned. Like that would be the case. Like
yeah,
if that's all it took, he's thin-skinned, and I don't think
yeah,
he is. I don't think that's all it took. I'm just saying that if that would be the case, and that's all it took, and Chase Myers prior to that conversation was just a model citizen, then yeah, then you're very very thin-skinned to go down, have it go down that way, and to be that way. But yeah, it's hard. You'd have to be talking to the AD here. This isn't
yep,
like you're just making unilateral decisions. Yeah, you had success last year, but you're still new at this thing, only 2 years in. And you're also, this is the crux. It's not like Steve Sabins is trying to lose here. This is not a nobody player. This is a pitcher he was trying to rely on who's already won games this year. Like he's not trying to kick a good pitcher off the team. That's always been the problem for this program. There's not enough of them, and they're not trying to lose. So other things happened. There's already rumors of other things that have happened. Unlike others, I don't have enough to confirm these things, so I'm not just going to throw an article up. But I'm just, but I'm just saying that it's not just one. There's no way it's one event. There's no way it's one event. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if he somehow does get back on the team because the mother, again, going off the mother, is saying, taking the mother at her word that there's going to be a meeting of maybe having that happen. Doesn't seem like that's likely though. If you get to the point where you're kicking somebody off a team, but multiple things had to occur to get here. Do I like the way it was handled? No. But I also got to take a little bit of Sabins at his word, and I understand it's hard to do that because he's a coach, and the statement was just nothing. But he's not trying to lose. You're not going to kick a player off a team that can help you just because of some smack talk. It's just not going to happen. Like that's just nuts. That would be really thin-skinned, 100%. I would agree with that. But that would just be really, really thin-skinned. Do I like the way he handled it? No. And it's just really interesting how this went down, how this happened multiple years. It didn't hurt him last year, obviously. It didn't hurt him last year. They were still fine. So they could still be fine now, but it's a weird addition of drama to a program that's arguably been the best at the school, like right now. Like they're Big 12 champs. Like this shouldn't be going on at the WVU baseball program. This sounds like more of a football program problem right now, but they're good enough. They're deep enough. They should still win some games. Do they win the Big 12 every year? Of course not. Is it hard to top year one for Sabins in year two? Sure. Year one was historic, but we'll see. I also think there's something to be said, Luke, and we can't get in his head. Again, he's a younger coach. He's closer to their age than Randy Mazey was for sure. He's more of an older brother than a father. He may want to exert himself. Like he has a baby face. It's hard to have him give a vibe that he's a hard-nosed coach, but maybe he is, and he's trying to give that vibe to those players that, hey, I'm not going to put up with any crap. Like it's his program. He had a great year. He's not going anywhere. This is his program now. He's earned this spot. He exceeded from Randy Mazey. maybe it's part of that in his brain, he feels like I have to be tough, maybe extra tough, because they're going to take advantage of me being younger if I don't act this way. Maybe that's in his brain too, but I don't like the way this was handled. You got to go in person. You got to go virtual in person at least, but it's not one event that would lead you here. That'll do it for this episode of the show. Mountaineer Report, available everywhere you get your podcasts. Of course, here on our YouTube channel and throughout the West Virginia Sports Now